So Mark, we might as well get this out of the way. Make your pitch for votes on Dancing with the Stars.
1-800-VOTE-411. What most of the contestants don't understand is the math of it all. So during the first couple of weeks, it's like 75% popularity and only 25% dance capability, thank goodness. So if I have any hopes of continuing on, y'all need to vote for me or go to abc.com. Monday nights, if you don't know, please, I need your votes. Okay.
All right, I gave you the shot.
I beg.
But I do have to ask, is there any guilt about blowing away Wayne Newton? I mean, think about that.
Yes. Oh, it was
I mean, what is he, 90? I mean, speaking of age, you know?
Yeah, but he has a lot of spendable income. No, I don't know how old Wayne is that I wasn't going to ask, but he's really a good guy. He was kind of like the granddad of the group, and really he worked hard. It's a lot more work than anybody can even conceive of, and I was surprised Wayne actually did it. Literally, now I'm doing the waltz this coming Monday. I practiced from 6, maybe a little after 6 till midnight last night, and the minute I'm done here, I'll fly back to Dallas and go to practice again, and use the time while I'm flying to do my real world jobs and stuff like that. So it's a lot of work, but I've lost 27 pounds. So
you look amazing.
Yeah,
you really
so
do.
there's a good side to all the work.
You really do.
Thanks.
I haven't seen you in a couple of years, and you really do look amazing. Next topic that has nothing to do with business innovation, or maybe a little, maybe it might. Why would you be interested in buying the Chicago Cubs? No, I'm dead serious.
Yeah, seriously, because they're an iconic team, and it does apply in terms of business innovation, because I think sports and digital media haven't been linked as strongly as they need to be. And I think while everybody's looking at the internet, there's 1,001 other opportunities in digital media in terms of how you distribute those bits that are untapped. And you know, when you can pick up an iconic brand like the Cubs and come up with different ways to utilize it in a digital universe, I think there's opportunity.
I think we've actually seen something interesting, maybe not as dramatic as what you would do with the Red Sox the last 4 years. There's a hell of a business story around the Red Sox and the fact
They've been
that,
brilliant.
of course, having an idiotically racist owner for 30 years didn't help them before, but so it isn't a great act to follow.
Touch that, yeah.
But these guys have not only won a world championship and sold out 300 and something straight games, but and found a way to add 4,000 or 5,000 more seats to that ballpark, but they've really maximize the cable network and all of that.
And I think a lot of people fail to realize that in sports. They think, okay, a rich owner comes in, spends lots of money, but the Yankees, they use the YES network, and like when I got to the Mavs, we were dead last in revenue. And we went from dead last to, I think we're the 6th largest market now, or 7th, and we're 3rd in revenue in the NBA, an increase of $100 million. So increasing my payroll was easy because we worked hard to generate the revenue to do that. And so there's a direct correlation between how innovative you are in terms of how you market and how you approach your consumers and your fans versus how well you perform on the court, in our case, or on the field.
And forgive me for not knowing this, but I know that the NFL, which is obviously hugely successful, is basically socialism. I mean, each individual team, the Bob Kraft can do the best job at the Patriots and has, by some measures, in the last 5 or 6 years, but he can't really become that much richer than the other teams.
Oh yeah, he can. Oh yeah, he can.
He can?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Because of the local marketing opportunities. In terms of television, you're
marketing,
right.
But in terms of television, merchandise.
And we're the same way.
And he can't spend more money. He can't be George Steinbrenner.
And we have a comparable cap.
And you have it in the NBA. But in baseball, with the Cubs, even though they have more revenue sharing than they used to, you could become, I don't know anything about the economics of the Cubs, but I imagine that you could leverage that.
That's the hope, but honestly, I don't know to this point because I haven't seen all the details. All I've been able to do is say that I'm interested and go through the qualification process, and then we'll see what happens and go from there.
Should Pinella have pulled Zambrano?
I know what I know, and I know what I don't have a clue about. So.
All right. All right. I had to try.
Yeah.
So I had a few things I wanted to talk to you about, and I think we have, Saul, some extra time here compared to some of the other interviews.
Sure.
And Mark and I did an interview some years ago at my conference that was great, because what I like about you is you're not shy about your opinions.
Yes,
and your
I am.
ideas.
People just don't appreciate my shy side. That's all.
So you were one of the earliest successful internet entrepreneurs in terms of coming up with a great idea. Actually, a little ahead of its time, I would say, in
Relative
terms
to
of
now, yeah.
video on the internet and selling it for a bunch of money. Tell us, because this is really about, this is not a technology conference per se, although there's a lot of technology theme here. These are folks who are interested in this whole question of how do you think of a great business idea, how do you sustain it, how do you get that idea moving, and then how do you monetize it?
I mean, to me, it's always been a simple it's always been a simple process. I just look at myself as a consumer. When I started Micro Solutions, which was my first company out of college, it was 1982, and I was selling IBM PCs and then ATs, and I had just a marginal business background, but I said, okay, this is new technology. Everybody's starting at the same point. I'm not behind anybody. How can I apply this to business and come up with better ways? And the success factor was doing my homework and understanding the application of technology to business. And what we did back then that was differentiated in 1983, early 83, I got in contact with this company called Novell Shared Data Systems and said, you know what, at some point in time, it's going to make sense to hook all these PCs together. And businesses are going to want to communicate. And we were one of the first 3-4 networking solutions companies in the entire country. And so
was that your key idea?
Yeah,
we obviously, Michael Dell also didn't have, I still don't think he has a technology company,
right.
But he had a great kind of set of business processes.
Michael Dell and I used to go head to head because we competed in a lot of ways. I remember I wrote a letter to Michael Dell and I looked for it and I can't find it. In 1984, what Michael Dell was, you talked about marketing earlier, was the most brilliant thing I ever saw Michael do was there used to be a magazine called PC Week.
Oh yeah.
And every week, and he's 18 at the time, I'm 23 or whatever, and every week he would put out an ad, full page ad, and every week it'd be the same products, but the price would go down every week. And so he became the market maker, if you will, that completely changed the perspective that instead of squeezing an extra dollar, you passed on the extra dollar, and it started that whole perspective of prices on technology.
Riding Moore's Law. Yeah.
Exactly right. And so, what we were trying to do back then is say, okay, we were going to differentiate ourselves, we were going to do our homework, we were going to put ourselves in a position to make our customers more productive and more profitable. The same concept applied to broadcast.com. When we started it as AudioNet, what we used as our proof of concept was being able to listen to Indiana basketball. I went to IU, lived in Dallas, and back then, remember in 1995, there wasn't even DirecTV. It hasn't been that long that we've had satellite television, so if a game wasn't on local television, it wasn't going to be on local radio, so there was no way to get it. So we thought, okay, we'll start using sports as a way to understand this technology. Where we made our money, and people don't realize, was in using the internet as real-time communications. We were now, if there's a public corporation and they do the quarterly shareholders meeting or quarterly announcements, earnings calls, it's always on the internet. We did the first one with Inside Enterprises back in 1996, and we were charging $200 a pop, and then it went to $500, then $5,000.
You're saying just audio?
Just audio, yeah. And then we started adding video, and it used to be when a company like Motorola, as an example, or Intel, wanted to hold a big meeting with all their sales reps or all their customers, they'd rent out rooms like this or theaters, and they'd do a satellite distribution, and they'd say, okay, everybody go to the theater, and we'll go to someplace that has an uplink, and we'll broadcast it to all these theaters, and that's how they communicated with their customers and employees. We said, we'll create the technology and do it over the net, and back in 1998, we were doing it where Michael Dell used to have breakfast with Dell, and he'd sit in front of a video camera, say, hi, I'm Michael Dell, this is what we're talking about, this is our new products. They'd automate the upload and make it available to all their customers online in 1998. And then this company 10 years later comes along and does the same thing. So, we were trying to just put ourselves, success to me was about taking the technology, not for technology's sake, but saying, how can I make our customers more profitable and give them a competitive advantage? And that's the way I've always looked at it. And that's harder because you have to do more homework and you have to do more preparation, but that's typically been the difference.
We talked in an interview I did with Jason Fried yesterday about this question of, we were talking about open source and a whole bunch of stuff, and one of the things that annoys me, and I'm like you, I have opinions, and
I rate them.
I have a platform. And Jason was strongly of this view that when you have a product, you have to figure out, you have to make a decision about what is that product, what is the design, not put every feature in the world in it, not put every option in the world into it, not build it for the sake of the technology,
Right.
but for the sake of the customer,
Right.
and try to make it simple in the best sense of that word. I
Right.
don't mean dumbed down at
Right.
all, but actually easy to use. Do you?
I agree with
side of
that.
I mean,
I think the challenge that people have with new products is, particularly in the technology world, is understanding whether it's a product or it should be a feature of another product. A lot of people think they've got this thing that such and such product doesn't do, and that is a standalone, not realizing that once that other product sees it, they're just going to add it. So you've got to me, a new product means understanding what makes it work in a way that you can deliver and they can consume in the path. The term I always use is path of least resistance. Does this product create the path of least resistance for your customer to do what they want to accomplish?
So since you know a lot about video and audio on the web, and since you just made that statement, is video on the web a destination like YouTube is today, or is it really kind of a data type that's just going to be everywhere?
It's just a data type. YouTube is popular for two reasons. One, they subsidize the bandwidth, or Google now, they subsidize the bandwidth of everybody on the internet. If you don't use YouTube to host, or Google Video to host your video, you're stupid, because they give it to you for free. And distributing internet video is not cheap. And I said it before, I think they're moronic for a year later for having bought YouTube. They can't monetize it in any way, shape, or form. But it's just a data type. And right now, the internet doesn't support it at the quality level or the scale level that everybody thought it would be able to at this point in time. But it's just a data type, bits are bits.
Bits are bits.
Bits are bits.
One of the things that I wonder what you think about is what I call the Soviet ministries in my columns. 10 years ago, if you brought out the Palm Pilot, let's use that as an example, which was brought out about 12 or 11 years ago, your only deal was you had to design it, you had to get it manufactured, you had to market it, and then you put it out there to your customers, some of whom were consumers, some of whom were corporate, whatever. If it flopped, and you either went out of business or you made a new one. If it was a big hit, you raced to produce more and do the next one. If it was somewhere in between, you tweaked it, you did whatever you had to. And there was this tremendous feedback loop. Bill Gates, in his first book, called it the frictionless capitalism. Today, so many things have to do with networks that you have to deal with the Soviet ministries, by which I mean the wireless phone carriers, the internet service providers like AT&T and Verizon, and the cable TV companies.
Right.
I call those guys the Soviet ministries.
Understand, yeah, I've read that.
And I used to be a foreign policy reporter. I used to go to actual Soviet ministries. In the Soviet Union, there were ministries that did things like decide how many raincoats to make in the Soviet Union this year.
5-year plans.
So they didn't use the market system. And how many would be women's raincoats, how many would be men, how many be in what size, how many would go to Minsk, how many would go to Moscow, whatever. And they got it wrong 100% of the time.
Right.
Not because they were stupid. If we tried it here, we'd get it wrong 100% of the time, because the market
is the market.
Does these things.
Right.
Verizon Wireless decides what cell phones you can use on its network.
Right.
And they decide what software can go on those cell phones. And they decide what services can be offered on those cell phones. In most cases, you can't offer anything on those phones unless you pay them a lot of money.
Yep.
How has that changed the process from when you were doing your first company? How has that made it harder for this kind of technology frictionless engine of feedback with the customer? And what are we going to do about it?
It's narrowed your choice. Well, actually, it's a great question, but I don't think it's changed. It's just the terminology's changed, because it used to be where you're going to put it on. Way back when, it was DEC versus HP versus Wang and whatever their operating systems were, and it was a controlled system. Then we got into PCs and we said, oh, it's more open, but it was really, okay, for a while DOS, then Windows versus Apple, and CP/M died off. And so you had to make your choice, and it was its own, it wasn't frictionless, except from the perspective that customers gave you an immediate feedback loop. And we have a lot of the same things today, where you're just choosing your operating system to develop on. Now, you've got multiple choices, so you're going to pick what it might be Windows Mobile, it might be whatever Verizon's supporting, and they may screw you around just like Microsoft would switch versions and screw you around, and there'd be an incompatibility for something you spent years working on. And it used to be the same thing in local area networking. There was ArcNet, there was Ethernet, everybody spent all this money on Token Ring, and then boom, it was gone, and everything went Ethernet. So I don't see it as being dramatically different. I see those companies as being victims of their own mistakes, and maybe there aren't quite as many opportunities because they're acting like Soviet ministries, but I don't see it as being all that different. At least there's enough different carriers, even if they're regionalized, that
There's four.
Right. Well,
There's 300 million people in this country.
Right, I understand, but if you look at the number...
There's 4 orifices, as Steve Jobs calls
Right,
them.
and Steve is, Steve is the king of orifices, right? Because he is one, right? And I say that in a polite way. I don't say that in a mean way. Because, look, if you were going to ask me what the greatest all-time opportunity is right at this second, it's creating a new operating system. Because Vista sucks. Mac is what it is.
Well, Mac's not, well, what's wrong with the Mac?
There's a lot of things not right with it. There's a lot of things you can't do with it. It's not open. You can't just develop whatever you want.
It is, sure you can.
Well, no,
absolutely. They have no control over it.
Well, no, there's a lot of control. If I'm Hewlett-Packard, I can't just put it on an HP.
Oh, no, but that's different. You can develop for it.
Right, you can develop.
You can
and that's what I'm
go
saying.
home right now.
Right now, all
and
these
write an app and put it on the
right,
Mac
and you can put it,
without Apple's permission, without paying them anything.
No question.
And that's the definition of an open operating
right,
system.
Except,
now, the fact that he won't license it to a hardware company is a different story.
Well, yeah, and open as an open source, meaning you can put it anywhere versus
right.
open as writing an application.
Right.
So you've got great hardware manufacturers that are phenomenal in coming up with all these developments in the PC and laptop arena, and they're beholden to an orifice, Microsoft, or Apple is their own thing. And so if you have phenomenal PC technology...
So are you investing in this?
I haven't seen any, I mean, other than people trying to do some new things on Linux,
Which, believe me, I've just reviewed, Dell is now shipping a Linux laptop.
And the desktop's
and my conclusion was, no normal person could use it.
Exactly. And that's exactly why I say what I said.
But doesn't that mean there's an opportunity for you to take, I'm talking about you, to take an open source, some version of Linux, and actually finish it?
If I had yes.
I mean, it's about, all these Linux distributions are about 80% done.
Right.
But the 20% is the key thing.
Is the key. And that's what I'm saying. I don't have the energy with everything I've got going on right now.
The dancing's getting
the dancing. HDNet.
Greatest opportunity right now in the world, but the dancing's getting
right, exactly. It is what it is, right? HDNet's kind of my focus. I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. But at the same time, yeah, there should be. I mean, just like there was AMD and some others that tried to take on Intel and they would do their clean room thing, someone to knock off Apple, if you will, and come up with a better version. There's an enormous market, enormous. I mean, it's a change the world type market. And
luckily, Steve Jobs isn't litigious, so you'd be okay.
You might be, well, yeah. Yeah, he's not going to come after you. But yeah, so I think that's where the opportunity is because, I just wrote a blog post about switching. I mean, I sold my first PC in 1982, and I used a Mac II about 1989, 1990, give or take, and hated it. And so never tried a Mac product again until I went to Vista, which kind of forced me to the dark side. It just was untenable, and it was too much hassle to try to I mean, it's not like I can't back up and reinstall an operating system. I can, but I don't want to. Right. I don't have the time to deal with it, and a MacBook just worked. And it worked for me, and I say that not because I think Macs have become phenomenal all of a sudden, but because 90% of what I do and what everybody does is net-driven.
Right.
It's just a browser.
It's a huge change for them.
Right, it's browsers.
Tremendous break.
Back in the 80s, it used to be what software is, I used to write for this PC magazine, Computer Reseller News, and it was geared towards the reseller channel, people who sold PCs and networks. And it was interesting to see what new software was going to come up, and you'd make all these decision points about, don't pick your PC until you know what software you're going to run. That's all gone now.
Right.
You're going to use Office-type applications, word processing, PowerPoint, etc. You're going to do email and everything else. You're not really worried unless you have...
Well, plus, on the computer, the Mac happens to come with a very nice suite of built-in stuff anyway.
Right. And even the PC...
You want photos, it's got a great photo,
and the PC
whatever.
has got some basic stuff that comes with it too. Not as good, but yeah, you can get the job done.
So was Vista a huge strategic mistake? Again, think about these people as business innovators. It took them they had this product, world dominating, still is. I mean, we're talking about it like it's not, but it is. And they went to do a new version. They had to start and stop twice. It took them 5.5 years. And in the end, People are completely not excited about it. And the interesting thing is it's forcing people to think about buying a new, it requires you basically to buy a new computer.
Right.
At which point you say, well, wait a minute, there's these other guys.
Right, exactly right.
They don't get viruses, and they can run Windows programs if I have to now,
Yep.
because that was a big
Right.
decision they made.
And most of what I do is on the net, and you look at Google and what others are doing in terms of being able to run basic apps, doc and spreadsheets.
Do those
and,
on a Mac?
Right, you know, and so you can do those on any platform.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was a mistake. And even in corporate America, where you've got to have things so, you know, I used to call it the n factorial issue, where everything has, you know, has to work with everything that came before it, and one new thing could just upset the apple cart and screw up everything. And this was the one thing that I think upset the apple cart, except in major corporations where they have more tolerance because everything has to be so stringent. And I think that's what's keeping Vista alive is corporations and universities and people who have standardized. But where I think Apple made their, or Microsoft made their huge mistake is they tried to make everything backward compatible. And at some point, you just have to say 20 years of backward compatibility, there's just too much bullshit there, sorry.
I have to tell you, I couldn't agree with you more, and I've had this argument with Bill 3 or 4 times. Jobs, you know, just cut you off at the knees about every 5 years.
You're out. Yeah, you're out. Exactly.
He just cut you off at the knees. And he's going to do it. He's going to bring out Leopard, and he's going to announce that if you have a Mac of a certain vintage, you know,
it's over.
The last couple of years, Macs will be fine,
Right.
and then before that, like, forget it.
And it's smart because he understands that there's a whole revolution going on, and there's multiple devices that are changing our lives. I mean, it used to be, it was exciting to see the new Pentium. How fast was it going to be?
Nobody cares.
No one cares anymore. 3 megahertz, you know, 3 gigahertz was fast 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and now you don't even know how fast with the duals and whatever, how fast it actually goes. And Vista has so much junk in it, it doesn't even go faster, it's slower. You know, it's taking you backwards. And I'm a huge Microsoft fan across the board. I mean, how they've been able to reinvent themselves outside the PC platform is phenomenal. But I think they're screwing it up on the PC, and I think that creates a unique opportunity.
Has the PC peaked? I say this, you're an early PC pioneer. I've written that it's peaked, and I get all kinds of crap. I wrote this actually, and within 3 days, Bill Gates and Paul Otellini had written, or their PR people had written, an op-ed piece in my paper attacking me, which was fine. But I mean, just any mention that the PC is peaked and that the cell phone is basically...
Those throw numbers at you, right? But the reality is, there was a day when you were excited about what was coming out next. That day's long gone. You don't, it's not about, I mean, people look for reasons not to replace their PCs as opposed to reasons to replace their PCs. And to me, that's the definition of having peaked.
So it's the cell phone, right? Or what we used to call the cell phone.
I think actually it's just consuming content more than anything else, where you want it, how you want it. And it's not just about the cell phone. And I'm bigoted in this because of HDNet, our high definition TV network. But if you look where people spend their money, it's everywhere but the PC. It's not even the internet. You know, cell phones is one way so that you can, to me, iPods and all the portable media are cures for boredom. You talk on the phone, they give you portable productivity because you can get email and you can get information on the net. But in reality, it used to be when you were going someplace, you stopped at the newsstand to get a newspaper, a book, or something to listen to or something to watch. Now you've got your laptop or you've got your PDA or you've got your phone, and that cures your boredom. And that's why people look for new features, because they're new cures for boredom. But at the same time, that's out of the house. In the house, where are we spending our money? We're not spending them on PCs. We're not spending more money on the internet. We're spending them on consumer electronics. You're buying a DVR. You're buying a high-definition television set. And you're hooking those two things up together. You're not even really trying to hook your PC up to them. And the hardest thing to do in all of technology is a home network that supports television and music. And so people are just...
But everybody's trying.
Well,
the last 3 consumer electronic shows...
have been all about it.
Have been all about it.
And they've all failed.
And they've all basically failed.
Yeah. Because you can't do it. Everybody wants to lie to you and say you're going to push high-definition television over wireless, and I don't care what the 802.11 standard is that you're perceiving you're using, it ain't going to work. And so the reality is it's not going to work for a while now, and it's kind of a race. How much are people consuming high-definition, real high-definition television versus what standards and what throughput are you getting in the home and over the internet? And you know, the number of high-def televisions, the number of high-def television networks are increasing a lot faster than the bandwidth speeds are increasing.
Now, you're a little biased, right?
Yeah,
because you
very
have
biased
a high-def television
because
network.
of HDNet, which is why, my bias is why I got into the business in the first place.
So tell us about that venture, and how did you get started in it, and why is it a good idea? Seems to me, doesn't everybody have high def now? So why?
Pretty much.
Why do we need a high def network? What's
Well,
the deal?
it's just programming. I have a company called HDNet, and it has 2 high def networks, HDNet and HDNet Movies, and hopefully everybody has them and has access to it. And what differentiated us at the beginning was that you can only receive them with the high definition television set. When I bought my first high def set, I think in 2000, there was a 90-minute loop on DirecTV, and that's all I could watch. And I found myself just
How was
staring.
it? Was it good?
It was terrible.
Okay.
But I still found myself staring at it for 90 minutes at a time. It was like, and I thought I had a sickness, and then I went online, the craziness or whatever, and I went online, and back then it was still CompuServe and discussion forums and all that kind of stuff, and found others with the same sickness and said, you know what, there's no content for these people, someone's got to fulfill it. And then I started taking a further look, why hasn't somebody done it? And at that point in time, in 2000, 2001, 2002, a high-def television, forget if it was plasma or LCD, was $8,000 to $10,000 for a 40-some-inch screen. And I looked, and everybody said, this is not going to take off, those are too expensive, and they didn't see the price going down. I looked at high-def televisions, and I saw Moore's Law. And I said, the prices are going to come down like this, performance is going to go like that, which is going to continue to do. You can buy a 42-inch and bigger set for $1,800 or less. You can buy a 37-inch for $700 at Walmart's. You're going to be able to buy, just like we saw the PC curve where prices went like that, performance went like that, you're going to be able to buy in 2 years a 70-inch LCD for under $2,000. Now, not everybody's going to be able to make it work in their home, but that's going to be... You're going to have that option. And
If you have those nails, though, you can...
Hey, you talk about consumerism in the baby boomers, though. Remember, only 5 years ago, if your buddy had the big screen and the Red Sox were playing, that's where you were going. And
That's
so
right.
it's still, now that those baby boomers can afford those, there's still that perception. We've been ingrained and we've been trained that a bigger screen is better and people will make the room. And so I saw that and said, okay, A, there wasn't content. B, everybody thinks the high-def price performance isn't going to change. It is what it is. And then C, I looked at the fact that the distributors, satellite and cable, were built around bandwidth. They had a certain amount of bandwidth either in the satellites they put up or their distribution system, 700 gigahertz, or gigahertz, whatever it may be. And they were supporting X number of channels that took up 3 megabits per channel, whereas an HD channel at that time took up 19 megabits. So I thought, you know what? If you take all the channels that exist today and expand them to 19 megabits, assume for compression that goes down to 8 megabits, there's not enough bandwidth to go around. So if I can get some oceanfront real estate, I'm going to be sitting pretty. And then if I can turn that into a great programming, because at some point in time, they will convert like they're starting to do just now, well then I'll have a following and people will be excited about my network.
And how has it worked out?
It's worked out great. I mean, we're growing 5% per month.
Are you in basic cable packages?
We're in some basic cable being if you buy a basic high definition package, we're part of that package. So if you get for $9.95 on Dish Network, you pay to get the high def channels, and we're part of that package.
And it's the same at Comcast?
We're not on Comcast yet. We're talking to them. So if you have Comcast, which I know is big in this area, call them up and say, I want HDNet, and then call 1-800-VOTE-411.
What kind of programming is on HDNet? Because, I mean, I have a high-def TV. I was relatively late to that, and I'm now addicted. I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know about the rest. How many have a high-def TV? Not just a big screen, but real high-def. How many use it to actually watch high-def primarily, as opposed to other stuff?
Good, we got a lot
I
of room
will
to grow.
actually watch a show if it's high-def that I don't even think I like, rather than watching a show I might like that isn't high-def.
We're geared more towards men in our programming, but 70% of men will turn to the high-definition channels on their programming guide first, every single time.
Right.
And like 40% will watch something, like you said, that's in high-def as opposed to not.
Yeah, my wife will walk in, what are you watching? I don't know, Australian
But it's really cool,
rugby.
yeah.
Something that's high-def.
But to answer your question on our program,
Look at the grass, it's fabulous, you know?
and that's what we used to do
Just
initially.
shakes her head, you know?
Yeah, initially that's exactly what we had. We had documentaries and things we could put together inexpensively that were pretty pictures. But Monday night we have sci-fi programming, so we have Smallville and we have Star Trek Enterprise, but we have a new program that we did with BBC called Torchwood. and it's just a great show. BBC airs it in standard def, and we air it in high def. It's a phenomenal show. Tuesday night is our news night, where we have Dan Rather reports, and we give Dan Rather just carte blanche to go out and do stories. He gets a full hour, just no commercial interruptions.
And no controversy there.
Dan always finds controversy. And then we have a show after Dan's, which kind of takes different viewpoints. It's called HDNet World Report, where we have stringers. We have 6 stringers in 60 cities around the world, and we put together packaging there. Wednesdays, we have license programs we bought from others. Thursday is typically sports night, so now we have the NHL on. Fridays are MMA.
You have the what?
NHL.
NHL.
National Hockey League, yeah. I know in Boston that's tough, in this region that's tough, but we won't go there. And then Friday night, we have kind of our younger guys programming, where we have our version of E-Wild on called Get Out. We send pretty girls in bikinis out to adventurous places around the world, and then they get drunk. And then we have... and I like the show. And then we have a show called Inside MMA, which is kind of sports center for mixed martial arts, and then we typically have a mixed martial arts event after that. Saturday, same type of sports, and then Sunday we have concerts. Concerts are amazing, because in the past, concerts never worked on television because you have a 4x3 screen and maybe some basic stereo. But on a big LCD or plasma, we have U2, Gwen Stefani, Black Eyed Peas, Coldplay, Radiohead, all these major groups, and people have them in home theaters. And all day Sunday, from noon on Sunday until 2 in the morning, all we play is concerts. And we have the world's largest high-definition concert library, and that's really popular as well.
And how many homes
We're in about 7 million homes right now.
You're in 7 million.
Right.
Does that mean you pass by 7?
No. We pass by about 65 million. We have 7 million subscribers. So pretty much everybody has got the picture but Cablevision and Comcast.
And just to go back over your reasoning on this, because obviously there's high def now on, Leno and Letterman are high def.
But the difference is
a lot of other high def.
There's more high def channels, but not a whole lot of high def content. So what's happening, there's a big ripoff in my opinion, because so-and-so, I won't name names, but they'll say, you know what, I'm CNN, so I'll put up, but I won't name names.
No, don't name names, please.
And they'll be excited because they have 2 hours.
Saul doesn't want you to name names.
No, I don't want, yeah. They'll be excited because they have 2 hours a week that's truly in high definition, and everything else is up converted. That's like, taking mono music and up converting it and calling it stereo. You can see the difference, and they're perceiving that consumers are idiots, that they can't tell the difference between something that they're saying is high def that isn't. And so they're starting to feel the backlash now. They made such a big deal about how many high def networks they have on the air, but didn't make a big deal of how many hours are actually in high def.
And is that going to be true with this DirecTV having 100 channels of high def?
Well, they might have 100 channels, but they might have, outside of HDNet, let's put our channels aside. If you exclude our channels, and if you take out ESPN, us, and Discovery, who have been there for a while, out of the new channels, you could probably turn on at 3 in the afternoon and not find a single thing on in high definition. But they might have 100 channels. That's a shame. And at some point, consumers that'll be a competitive point. Now,
and is it just physics that the bandwidth, it's just never going to have enough bandwidth for all the shows and all the channels?
Not in that point. They have enough bandwidth for that many, and that's the sad part, because to show what happens is CNN, whoever it is, they'll upconvert so that it takes up 8 megabits of bandwidth, but it's not high def content. And so it's a shame, but the reality is consumers are going to know the difference. And at some point, that'll become the competitive level that the number of channels is now. So once everybody gets past, we all have 50 channels, then they'll start saying, well, you might have 50 channels, but you only have, 5 hours a day of high definition content, and that'll be the next battleground.
So Microsoft announced a couple weeks ago that they were going to bring out for the second time actually, they were going to try to bring out a box that connects to your TV, that collects the media from all your computers around your house, and I think it may or may not actually go out to the internet and get some stuff and put it on your TV. This is very similar to Apple TV,
sure.
which Steve Jobs now calls a hobby.
It's amazing how that changed.
That's what he said when I was interviewing him at D. And it's Apple TV is, I don't know what the new Microsoft one will be like, but Apple TV is $295. It's HD capable. It puts out 720p.
Right.
And if you have some HD content from somewhere, you can put it on there. But he doesn't sell HD content yet on iTunes. And partly, I think, because of bandwidth.
Right, because it takes forever to download it.
Constraints.
Yeah.
So, you're a big believer in the internet, you have been, but it sounds like you're saying you don't think the internet will ever be able to deliver HD in the United States. Do you really believe that?
Until things change. I mean, there might be 1 or 2 networks out there that can support it, but just look at the numbers. So right now, the perception is, well, if I can receive one, let me take a step back. CBS and what used to be called Sportsline, now CBS Sports, whatever they're calling it, made a big deal of being able to support 350,000 simultaneous users watching the NCAA Final Four television games simultaneously, right? At a 300K feed.
Yeah, 300K, which is not...
Nothing, right? So
Right.
350,000 users at 300K. That's a big deal that they were trumpeting. So imagine if that high definition feed were 4 megabits or 6 megabits at the low end, the lower quality ends. How many are you going to be able to support at the same time? And what's going to happen to the rest of the internet? And as our consumption of
So what if
video-
you're not streaming, but you're downloading? Well, I
Same
suppose
difference.
it's the iTunes
It's
model.
the same difference. I mean, because if you're not streaming, it's still the same. If you stream it, it may not be at the same time, and you can stagger it. But if everybody else has got something else going on too, it's the same as streaming it. And even if you use multicast, you still have the same issues. You still got to get from point A to
Now,
point B.
5 years ago, did you think we'd be better, have faster, better broadband today
No,
than we
and that's one of the reasons I started HDN. 5 years ago, I didn't. 10 years ago, I did. 10 years ago, when we had broadcast.com, if you would have said, okay, it's 1997, what do you envision for 2007? I would have said 100 megabits to every home, based off of all the infrastructure building that was going on and all the investments that were happening. That's where I was wrong. I mean, I was dead wrong, obviously.
Why didn't it happen? Because let me just interject.
Everything fell apart. Everything fell apart. All the investment fell apart in 2000. There was so much money going into...
But how come you can get, and this is literally true, in Sweden, in France, let me repeat that, in France, you can get like 100 megabits for, I don't know, 40 bucks a month or 30 bucks a month. I have Fios. Anybody have Fios in their house? Verizon Fios. I get 15 megabits down, which they can't even get that in Silicon Valley. People are incredibly envious. I pay 45 bucks. They just announced they're raising me to 57 bucks. I'm still going to pay it because I can't get anything close to that. It's 15 megabits down and 2 up. This is the United States. Why can't we do better than that?
Because all these companies are public companies, and they get yelled at for making those types of investments. Verizon stock got crushed for a while because they made that kind of investment. So again, one of the reasons I started HDNet, because all the media companies are public corporations, and that's one of the challenges right now. All our big companies are run by public companies, and the stock market isn't about you and I being investors anymore. It's about major hedge funds and big mutual funds investing for us, saying, we want to return, and that's going to hurt us over the long run. Innovation is great from individuals like are here and small companies, but from the Soviet bloc, innovation is stagnated because of earnings per share, and that is.
And the cable companies are part of this. In my definition, they're Soviet industries as well.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the reasons Cox and now potentially Cablevision are looking to go private, because they recognize that as public companies, they're not going to be able to keep up and compete with the Verizons of the world, and they know that that's a problem. And you may see even more companies go private that need to make significant investments in order to compete.
So let's see, what are you not in? You're in sports, you're in dancing.
It's all just media. It's all just digital, right? Other than the dancing.
Now you're in movies, right?
Yeah,
You got movie theaters. What's it, Landmark?
Landmark Theaters.
I have to tell you, I love my Landmark Theater.
Thank you.
In Bethesda, Maryland.
Oh, yeah, Bethesda's
I go
great.
there all the time.
Yep.
Bethesda Row, it's great. Tell them about that, and why'd you get into that, and what's the deal there? What's the business innovation there?
My partner and I, Todd Wagner, and Todd's my blood partner in everything for the most part. We had HDNet, which is a way to distribute to televisions. We started to produce movies, and we thought, you know what? We can make the movies, we can distribute them online if we want, we can distribute them to televisions, but theaters are still going to be part of the entertainment experience. As much as everybody thinks that as your TVs get bigger and bigger, that we're not going to leave the home, the reality is, as long as the kids are crying and everybody else is yelling and the phone is ringing, you need to get out of the house. And going to a movie, it has to be an improved experience. So we bought Landmark Theaters, which is geared towards an older baby boomer demographic, where you're going with your wife and kids. You're not going to see Saw 13. You're going to see, Michael Clayton or Enron, the smartest guys in the room, which was one of our movies. So, so we bought this so that we could control the whole vertical chain. We can make them, we can distribute them, and then because we can control the whole vertical chain, we can distribute things differently.
So you are Steve Jobs. Come on.
I'm not as creative as Steve. I'm not as ubiquitous as Steve. He's done an amazing job. But
no, but I mean, there is that, you're trying to design an ecosystem.
Exactly right. When we want to create things digitally and get them to people how they want to consume them, where they want to consume them. So we have a DVD company, and so we have Magnolia Home Entertainment that distributes DVDs. And one thing we don't make a big deal about it, but we started the company 2 years ago now, maybe 2.5 years ago, and every single DVD that we distribute with all of our movies, whether it's Enron, The Smartest Guys in the Room, or any other movie, none of them have copy protection, and we're doing just fine. So if you buy a Magnolia home video product,
you can rip it.
You can rip it, you can copy it to your iPod, you can copy it wherever you damn well please, but if I see you selling it on the street, I'm going to beat the hell out of you.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right, but let's go back to the movie theaters for a minute. And maybe I have this wrong, I'm just judging from the one that I patronize, but I mean, it's an art house theater, It's an indie, it's not all movies you produce. You
No, but it's not even an art house indie, it's geared towards baby boomers. It's geared towards intelligent consumption of movies. So
it fits in very well with our last, segment.
Exactly right, because we recognize that you want to go with your wife to the movies, and that's how we program it. It may be smaller movies.
There's never any babies in there, I got to tell you, I love that.
Well, exactly, and there aren't kids all gothed out screaming, and holding, yelling at the screen and stuff like that. At least not usually, and so it's really programmed for adults. It's a date night for adults destination.
And how many do you have?
There are 70 locations, 270 screens, and we keep on opening more as we can. We're opening in Baltimore, in Denver. We just opened up in LA. And not only are we going to be doing movies, or we have been doing movies, but not only that, but we're going to be doing live events. So we're talking to operas, we're talking to Broadway plays, we're talking all these different things, because the reality of the movie business is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday are good, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday suck. And so we want to be able to program in different ways. And we're also looking at 3D, high bandwidth consumption applications. So imagine watching Cirque du Soleil in 3D, not with the little flimsy paper glasses, but with glasses that you can buy that make this just a spectacular event.
Actually, I'm not trying to name drop, but this is really a true story. About 3 weeks ago, I get a call from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who I slightly know, and he says, you got to come out. You got to come out, and I got to show you what we're doing at DreamWorks, because 3D is coming back in a big way.
Big way.
And I said, oh my God, with the cardboard glasses, what are you talking about? He goes, no. You won't even need any glasses for some of it. Depends. Some of it, no. Some of it, you'll use these like polarized glasses.
Right. Yeah, polarized glasses are going to be more popular. But then
and I said, what are you talking about? One-off movie? He says, no, this is going to be big. It's going to be across
huge.
Everything.
Yeah, there'll be over 1,000 theaters that are 3D enabled over the next 18 months. And so you're going to see initially more animation than not, and then I think there's a movie Beowulf, James Cameron's doing some stuff. We're looking at doing stuff, and you'll see all the horror flicks, because that's, dismemberment and blood coming at you. Yeah. They won't necessarily be in our theaters, but again, then it's just bandwidth. And the interesting thing is we'll be doing Mavericks games. We're looking at doing MMA fights in 3D, going to different types of 3D-enabled theaters. So you'll see a whole different segment of out-of-home entertainment that's just taken to the next level, because bits are bits. And it's all about bandwidth. And then it raises the interesting question about what about your home to TV? Every single Samsung TV that's being sold, high-def television, is 3D enabled now. And so that it's optimized for 3D. So
well, that just started.
That just started, right.
Yeah.
And so at some point in time, we'll be able to say, okay, if you've got a TiVo, let's say, or any DVR, at 3 o'clock in the morning, HDNet or HDNet Movies is going to be putting this on.
Not any DVR. The DVR you get from your cable company is such a piece of crap.
Well,
that
okay.
It'll never be able to.
Well,
it won't even pause. Never mind.
If it supports high def. If it supports high def, it'll be able to capture it at a high enough speed for bandwidth. To capture the bandwidth, and you'll be able to save the high def and come back and watch it in 3D when you want.
Now, are your theaters digital?
They're both, because as digital movies are great, but the business plan behind digital, we bought them 3.5 years ago, and the first thing I did was we got to go digital across the board. But then the idea was, the business plan was, well, since they didn't have to create a 35mm print, they'd pay you a digital licensing fee, and that's all kind of fallen apart. So we have digital, but it's more for specialty prints, 4K prints and stuff like that, and for live events. Because it's easy to take that digital projector, just like you have here, and connect it to DirecTV or Dish Network and show live events. Using it for film, it's anymore because movies stay in the theater such a short period of time. It's almost where it used to be, you got a more pristine, it didn't become decrepit over time. Now it doesn't matter because it's only there 2 weeks anyways.
How do you motivate your people in your companies to stay on target with the core idea?
I'm not as good at it as I used to be because I used to be a lot more fun than I am now. But it's all about
unimaginable, Mark.
I know it is. I know it is. I mean, literally, my first company, we had a company shot, the Kamikaze. So when we accomplished something, we'd all go to the same bar and we create vats. Not that I promote drinking too much, but having fun. I try to make it when people come to work, they have fun. And so I try to allow them where they have passions and things that they're really interested in. As long as they can communicate it to us, we'll try to find a way to enable it. It doesn't always work. In some businesses like the theaters, someone behind a concession stand, it's hard to find something for them that's always fun. But at the same time, we've taken movies that people have created on low budgets that worked as concession workers in our theaters and shown them on the big screen, kind of as a way of rewarding them and encouraging them to be creative. And that's what I try to do, just try to reward people, encourage them, and let them know that I'm paying attention and we care.
Is Google just going to have a run that will let them, you were kind of critical of their YouTube thing a little while ago. They seem unstoppable.
They do, don't they?
They have this kind of management style where they let people spend supposedly 20% of their time. We know that their slogan, their slogan, don't be evil.
Yeah, right.
Slogan.
Yeah.
So are they the perfect company that just can't
Just
be
like
stopped?
Microsoft was and IBM was before them. You're always perfect until you're not. And some 12-year-old's coming up with a better idea, and we'll move on to the next thing. It's just the reality of the world. IBM, there were antitrust lawsuits that took 20 years even when IBM was close to going out of business and struggling, And it used to be you ran your company and always envisioned how you'd compete with IBM. Then you ran your company and always envisioned how you compete with Microsoft. Now you run it envisioning how you can compete with Google. And someone will come up with a better algorithm for monetizing search. Someone will come up with a different way of searching. It may be driven by PDAs or telephones. It may be driven by something that happens on your TV. Google is completely dependent on that PC being the primary device of interaction for all things search-driven. I don't know that that's a bet that I would make long-term.
So,
I mean, today they're dominant, but that's.
But they're about to do something big in cell phones.
Well, they're certainly going to try, and they have to be smart. But who knows how big that'll be and how well it will work? There's a lot of Apple devices that have been thrown by the wayside. It took the iPod how many years to really catch on, and other people really didn't try to get into that market. So I think, to your point earlier, the cell phone PDA outside the home market is super competitive, even though it's controlled by a lot of the folks. And Google, if anybody, can take advantage of all the oligarchies, whatever they call it, the Soviet ministries. Yeah, the Soviet ministries. In a way few companies can, by buying up spectrum and creating their own phones and et cetera. But I still think they're vulnerable to innovation.
Would you bid on that spectrum? Are you going to bid on that?
I'm not going to bid on that spectrum.
Have you thought about it?
No, because it's still a shared medium.
You guys know we're talking about the new FCC spectrum auction where Google is talking about bidding to create a sort of a network where any device can be hooked up to it, and unlike the way it is now where you have to sort of get a device that AT&T approves of or whatever.
But I don't think it's a device connectivity issue. I think it's a bandwidth issue. Because as the consumption of bandwidth goes like this, that spectrum still, you can play with it in different ways, but it's still a shared medium. And we still can't get our shared medium bandwidth in our homes to work in a way that is great. Now, that's not to say, I have Sprint and I have all the different mobile cards, and getting 700K is great. But can you envision just a megabit being enough to do everything everybody wanted to do? Yet in 700 megahertz spectrum, how much, with 300 million customers, how much bandwidth is anybody ever going to get? Even if you can connect to any type of device. There'll be all kinds of unique applications. To me, the flinch point, the point where things change is 100 megabits throughput to the home. When they were talking about applications for baby boomers being able to connect your hospital to your home, and that's when things change. That's when you have a platform
so
where
is there any hope or prospect that you know of getting to 100 megabits in the home?
Yeah.
Tell me what it is.
Verizon. Verizon can do it.
With this fiber to the home.
Yeah. Anybody, and not just Verizon, anybody who puts fiber. The problem.
They're the only ones, as far as I know, that are putting fiber right to the home.
There's more.
When I ordered it, They came out to first I saw, they put it in my street, and I called them up, and a couple of months later they said, okay, it's ready. And they send a truck, and they dig a little trench in your yard, and they put fiber, and they take the old box with the copper wire that was invented in 1900 off the side of your house, and they put it's a box with a laser that lights the fiber.
And it's a great point. The old box that was invented in 1900, and that's the device, and that's the type of connectivity that we're depending on for all these new phenomenal internet things, which is exactly one of the key reasons why I said the internet's dead. But at the same time, you talk about development platforms and APIs. When I sat and talked to Verizon and another company that's doing fiber to the home that I'm not allowed to talk about, I said, look, if you create an API in a college network environment or a college university environment and say, start developing, here's 100 megabits. What kind of applications are they going to come up?
Amazing.
Phenomenal applications. That's going to be the next inflection point.
Verizon isn't the kind of company that's typically interested.
That's what I said. If there's one company I could buy and I can't afford it, that would be the company.
Because they're the biggest Soviet ministry.
Right. Well,
and
it's just
thinking like that.
Just in terms of market cap, it's outrageous.
No, but I mean, just their thinking also. They're the most. If you think about Verizon,
well, at least they brought me in. At least they brought me in and talked to me. Which was a step. Whether or not they do anything with it is a whole other question. But because if you can hit 100 megabits throughput today, with all the new electronics that are coming out and the passive fiber stuff that's coming out, you'll be able to hit a gigabit over the next 15 years to the home throughput. Imagine the applications you can have then. Then all this stuff becomes mishigas.
Well, they'll sell you 30 megabits for $150 a month.
And if they can do 30,
yeah,
they can do more.
So, would you say it's harder today or easier today for folks out here, other folks who have a good business idea, to get it funded, and not just to get it funded, but to actually get it to where it actually sustains itself?
It's a lot easier today, and not because it's easier to get funding. There's a lot of money out there, probably a lot more money today out there than it was 5 years, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But the cost of technology is so small right now, and the cost of connectivity is so small right now. I mean, it wasn't...
Even if your business isn't a tech business.
Even if your business isn't a tech business, there's some tech connection there somewhere. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that to buy a basic PC, I mean, at broadcast.com, we had over 1,000 PCs that cost $3,000 a piece with 250 megabyte hard drives.
Yeah.
Megabyte hard drive, not gigabyte, and you can buy 16 gigabyte flash drives and soon 32 gigabyte. So having the foundation on which to develop, which means because you don't have to make the capital investment, you can have intellectual capital that is more important. So sweat equity is a lot more valuable today. Intellectual property is a lot more valuable today than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because it's easier to implement it no matter what the idea. And I think one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make in getting started is they try to think about how much money they need to raise rather than how much work they need to do to get started. Because the best source of equity, of capital ever, are your potential customers. And that's every company I've ever started, my first equity. The first company I didn't have to raise any equity. I was living 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment and starving myself to pay for it. But the second one, broadcast.com, when we got to that point, we went to our customers because they saw the value and they were willing to invest. Sweat equity overcomes the need for capital every single time. And if you think you need to raise capital, just start smaller. And then once you can get that idea to start going, people will see the value and come to you. And
do you need... Once you get established and you get going, Irving Waldowski-Berger this morning said you may need a near-death experience in your company to reinvent yourself. Now, maybe you haven't had your companies going for that long to face it.
He's right, but I try not to wait that long. I tell myself every single morning of every single day for every one of my companies that there's a 12-year-old somewhere trying to kick my ass who's a lot younger, a lot sharper, a lot smarter, and a lot quicker than I am. So I have to work a lot harder. And if you don't, that's the way I tell everybody to look at their company, that someone's, whether it's Google, Microsoft, or that 12-year-old, they're trying to kick your ass. And if you don't perceive that your business that way, you're going to wake up one day and your ass is going to be kicked.
So you can never relax.
You can never relax, but that's the fun of it. That's the continuous challenge of continuing the intellectual challenge. That's why I like starting businesses, because it's a continual intellectual challenges, particularly in the technology world. And that's, to me, the competitive side of me, that's what makes it fun.
All right, I have one last question.
Sure.
What's your next business you're going to start?
I'm done.
I mean, maybe you'll buy the Cubs, and maybe you'll do something revolutionary there. But what's your next, like,
I
new
mean, in
business?
reality, I think HDNet just trying to leverage digital media in new ways, because I think, we talked about 3D, we talked about the theaters, that there's so many, everybody is so focused on the internet when it comes to digital media or digital anything, that I think they're looking the wrong direction. And back over here, if you look where people are actually spending real money, they're buying the TVs, they're buying the DVRs, they're looking for ways to implement connectivity in their homes so they can consume those things differently, completely separate from the internet. They're going to movies, they're looking for different types of entertainment outside the home. That's where all the fun stuff is, and I'm trying to find better ways to leverage that for HDNet, Landmark, and the Mavericks and everything else.
So not starting another new company anytime soon?
There may be, there may be little implementations, but not like some unique technology that I think this is where everybody needs to be. Because I think, like was earlier said, there's so many untapped markets. Everybody's just so internet focused that there's a lot of easy stuff out there that's just, we can keep on moving HDNet and the other digital media properties we have. And I think that's what makes this a unique period in time.
Well, thank you so much for coming and taking time away from
Thank you.
the dance practice.
It was worth it.